Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, here today to talk about The Sorrows of Young Werther by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Don't have the physical book. I did an old Project Gutenberg ebook for this. And this was one that, as with many things on this channel, was a long time coming. Goethe is he is one of the writers. I'll just say that, like writers with a capital W. There are writers, and then there are writers, and Goethe is certainly one of the latter. He towers over, of course, German literature, obviously, but Western literature as well, in a broader sense. His influence, particularly from works like Faust, um, just a tremendous impression and imitation and influence to this day, almost 200 years after his death. And so, it was with great interest that he had been on my list, but for years I'd been putting him off. I'd been like, you know what, you know, maybe some other time, maybe some other time. I'd thought about maybe diving into Faust, but that seemed a little too overwhelming. I mean, the story of Faust, of a guy, is, I understand it, just selling his soul to the devil. It's a tale as old as time, and of course, Goethe himself was expanding upon the Faust legend, a broader folklore legend. But I'd heard some things that, some people who had said it's better to read Faust, if you can, in the original German, because Goethe is a prose master, they say, and it doesn't always translate over well into English. And I don't speak nor read elementary German, let alone fluent. So I'd put that aside. But he's written at least two novels. Goethe, very much so, he had his interests were spread. I mean, he had novels, he had epic poetry, he had scientific treatises, I think some philosophical works, and stage plays, prose plays like Faust. Pretty much every conceivable genre, almost. He had written a little bit in every single one. I don't think he had major concentrations in any one particular place, but a whole host of interests. Now, The Sorrows of Young Werther was one of the ones that had, again, come to the surface. Now, again, I've already mentioned a lot of my reasons for being interested in Goethe, but another, a chief one perhaps, was the influence that he had on a lot of, primarily German, Austrian composers, or composers who worked quite heavily in the German language, and again were themselves German or Austrian. Composers of the likes of Mozart, Beethoven, Wagner, and Mahler. I love all four of those composers dearly. Those are four of my favorites. Certainly Mozart is, I'm sure, a favorite of everybody's, but Beethoven and Wagner I love, and I'll be doing a review soon on this channel of the libretto of The Ring of the Nibelung, which I think is arguably the greatest artistic achievement in human history. And Mahler, and so, but all four of these composers, at least, I mean, there are four of many more, I'm sure, that have done musical settings to a lot of Goethe's poetry, a lot of to Faust, whether opera adaptations of Faust, or I think of Mahler's Eighth Symphony, the second movement of it. He provides a setting for Faust. It's like almost an hour long chunk of his Eighth Symphony, the Symphony of 1,000, which is a lovely one. But again, so for years it had been, okay, I gotta read Goethe. So I'm like, all right, I'll start with Sorrows of Young Werther. It seems like a good place to start, and I hated it. I know what I like when it comes to reading, and I don't often. It's at least for me, it's rare nowadays that I'll read something that I will really hate. Because again, I know my interests, I know what I like, and I know what I don't like, and so I avoid what I don't like, as I think most people do, and I stick with what I like. I mean, I like to try new things, and I think that's when the hatred comes because I try something new and I just run up against a wall. Um, Sometimes I'll read a work by an author I like that I hate. Things like Henry James' Turn of the Screw. Hated Turn of the Screw, but I love a lot of his other novels. Portrait of a Lady is a masterpiece. Last year, too, I can remember I read Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck, the winner of the 2024 International Booker Prize. Hated it. There was a lot of potential in that, a lot that I felt like that lended the book to being great, but it kept on the threads that just dogged me, and I just couldn't stand. So unfortunately, Mr. Goethe and I got off on the wrong foot. So what is this about? So Sorrows of Young Werther. It's a very short novel. It is romanticism, proto-romantic. As I understand it, it is one of the seminal works of the Sturm und Drang movement. Again, proto-romantic, that was I think, a reaction to a lot of the rationalistic Enlightenment stuff. So you get a lot of works of art that kind of go literally pedal to the metal, emotional, these like literally broad strokes of just heaving emotion in these characters, whether that's, novels, poetry. I'm sure some like I'm sure that painting artistry was part of the Sturm und Drang. I want to say Durmstrang, but that's just the old Harry Potter fan in me still kicking around. I want to say Durm und Strong, not Strong and Sturm or whatever. You know what I'm saying. So this movement, because I get it confused with Harry Potter. So this was one of the works, and so it's about a man named Werther, who in like a countryside visit, he ends up kind of befriending this woman named Charlotte, who is betrothed to a man named Albert, and he kind of gets along with them very well. It's quite clear, and it's evident from the jump that what Goethe is going with is that this is a man who is infatuated with this woman who is not betrothed to him, and who is she's made her pick, so to speak, and she's going to be happily married to this man, and she is very much so set in her decision. And Werther can do nothing but kind of pine away helplessly, while at the same time he maintains a good friendship with her, as well as eventually a pretty good friendship with her betrothed, and then later her husband Albert. While he just and this is in a epistolary novel. It's a novel of letters. Werther writing to his friend Wilhelm, and he just pines away and pines away and pines away. And I get that this kind of like throbbing sorrow is what Goethe is going for, but when you have the entire kind of emotional key of a work pedal to the metal 100%, it never kind of lets off. But it's not just that the emotion is so intense and so heavy, it becomes overbearing, it's trite, it's cliche ridden. Now, because this is a proto-romantic work, maybe Goethe is to blame for creating some elements that for the time were very original, but then became overused again and again. That might be part of the problem here, is that Goethe might not be to blame. He might have been the one to kind of start off the movement. But just, it's the unrequited love, the love triangle, it's just, it was so, there was no substance. There was nothing to latch on to. Werther in this book, as he's writing these letters, he'll wax poetic and yearning about the countryside and the mountains and the rivers, and you can almost hear the freaking Vorspiel of Das Rheingold in the background. That's like trying to break through, but it can't, because what Goethe is writing about is just, it's so tacky in comparison. The Vorspiel of Das Rheingold, it speaks to the trueness of the world and the utter base beauty. And Goethe here is just kind of, it's like a Norman Rockwell version of the Das Rheingold Vorspiel. Not to diss Norman Rockwell, but it's almost like a print of a Norman Rockwell painting, and that's what I'm getting when I read the Sorrows of young Werther. It's so. It's trite and it's cliche written, and it's just so overbearing, and then it becomes dull. And this is, honestly, this is a shame. I did not go into this wanting to hate it by any means. I was excited because I finally was reading something by Goethe, this author who stands head and shoulders above 99% of other writers, or so I'm told. And again, it's a shame that this is my first impression of Goethe. I will eventually down the line read other works by him. Or maybe he's just not for me ultimately, which is a shame. I heard of the influence that this work had. I know the influence that Goethe has. It's just, again, because it's about this man who's just pining and pining away at a situation he knows has no point. But it's not just that. There's no greater piercing psychological depth or maybe any prose flourishes that I've heard are Goethe's strength, the beauty of prose crafting. Maybe that's just lost in whatever old translation I read. That is possible too. There might literally be something lost in translation here. But it wasn't just the prose that I had issue with. It was just the whole structure of this. It's just a man who, it's just Charlotte. Oh my, I'm like pining away. I'm so in misery, I think I just need to die. And it's the emotions taken to the extremes, which I understand. The Sturm und Drang, that was the whole purpose of the movement. Maybe I just don't like the Sturm und Drang movement. I don't know. It's just a shame. That's what I can come back to. I'll provide some spoilers, brief spoilers here for the end. But obviously, a tragic love triangle. What's going to happen in it? Somebody's going to die. And surprise, surprise, Werther ends up killing himself. And at that point, it just seemed more, unfortunately, funny than anything. Just because I was like, okay. I kind of, again, from the jump, I just was like, this. Again, it's trite. It's not inspired. It's just, blech. And it just it continued. I was waiting for it to surprise me and be like, oh, okay, maybe we start here, but then we go up here. And it just stayed at the same level the whole time. This emotional extreme. But it wasn't just that it was an emotional extreme again. It was that it was so overbearing in its sappiness that it felt like a copy of a Norman Rockwell painting or something. Doesn't speak to real humanity. It does not. It doesn't offer insight, which I think great works of literature should. It should offer insight into the human condition. This does not. This just seems like something that you would think a moody middle schooler would have written. Again, I'm not saying that like anything I could have written when I was 13 or 14 years old would have had anywhere near the remote impact of something that Goethe wrote. It's just, this seems like the type of work that I'm like, really? This was the work that put Goethe's name out there? Come on. I don't know. I don't often have these opinions about books, especially on this channel, because, again, I know what I like, and when I try new things, I have a feeling I'll like them. And usually the feeling I have is validated in the work I read, but not so here. Goethe was 24. He was around my age when he wrote this, and so it's just So I mean, I get it. You're a 24-year-old guy, and you're going through life, and you might run up into these like hopeless love situations, which you just know won't work out. And I mean, hey, we've all been there, right? But it trying to translate this into a work of art, it just doesn't do that. So anyway, maybe some other day, Mr. Goethe. I don't know. Anyway, the Sorrows of Young Werther. If you've read it, let me know what you think of it. And as always, I will see you guys next time.